Hello students, we have seen constitutional development during British first 100 years. It was the rule of East India Company from 1757 to 1857, during which we see the trend of centralization and denial of representation to Indians. However, there was also impact of industrial revolution starting from England. Industrial revolution was an ongoing revolution, and it reinforced military industry of Britain, and it also expanded their colonies all over the world, including that in India. So it's not a coincidence that Battle of Plassey 1757 was around industrial revolution, and after that there was series of territorial expansions. So we have already seen from Regulating Act 1773 to 1853 Charter Act, and also during Crown's Rule 1858 to 1935, we see the reversal of the trend, because all steps were taken to reverse the causes of revolt, because such armed revolt would be threatening their life and property. So to prevent such reoccurrence, there will be decentralization, there will be gradual Indianization of the councils, and the purpose was to sustain the rule in India for longer duration. So we see that in this time period, the lawmaking powers of provinces were restored in 1861. Debate on budget was allowed in 1892 Indian Council Act. Then direct election for local bodies was introduced in 1909. Direct election for councils were there in Montego-Chelmsford reforms 1919. And gradually more and more people got voting rights. So after 1935 Government of India Act, it was clear that next agenda would be a responsible government at center, because provincial autonomy was already established in 1935 Government of India Act. By that, all provincial subjects were given to popularly elected ministers. Now the things were changing very fast after 1935. Second World War broke out in 1937 onwards, means 1939 onwards, and during the Second World War, British gave so many offers to Indians, although Indians denied that. Finally, Shimla Conference, and I discussed Cabinet Mission Plan as well. So up to this we have done in the last class as well. Now we move forward. So I discussed the composition of Constituent Assembly, 389 member Constituent Assembly, that state-wise composition. First, 299 were elected from British Indian states by members of provincial legislature, while 93 were nominated from princely states and 4 from High Commissioner state. So in this way, this was state-wise composition. As far as party-wise composition of Constituent Assembly is concerned, 208 with Congress, Indian National Congress, there was comfortable majority, 73 with Muslim League, and rest others. But after communal partition, based on Mountbatten Plan, the Constituent Assembly itself was divided to 99 with India and 90 with the Pakistan. Here it is 292, 93 and 4. Here 299 with Congress and 229 from British Indian states and 70 from princely states. So Constituent Assembly had double role. One role was to frame constitution, and second role was to act as a legislative body. So Constituent Assembly had double role, and the first role to frame Indian Constitution continued from 9 December 1946 till the 26th or 25th January 1950. because our constitution came into force on 26th January 1950, and the last meet of Constituent Assembly was on 24th, in which preamble was finally accepted. So in this capacity, framing of constitution, it was chaired by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Framing of constitution, it was chaired by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. In the second capacity, its role was to act as a legislative body, and in this capacity, it was chaired by G.V. Mavlankar, and this role continued till first general election 1950-152. First general election based on our constitution, based on universal adult franchise, was conducted and finally concluded in 1952. And this is how the Constituent Assembly had double role. And we will find that what are the features, broader features of our constitution, salient features of our constitution, and after that we will be discussing more things. So when the work was stupendous, Constituent Assembly's work was stupendous to frame our constitution. So naturally there has to be division of work and specialization of work. So various committees were formed. The very purpose for forming committees of a larger body is to ensure division of work and specialization of work. So 13 major committees were there, and all important personalities who participated in national movement except Mahatma Gandhi participated in framing of our constitution. So as far as drafting committee is concerned, it was chaired by B.R. Ambedkar. Drafting committee was concerned, it was chaired by B.R. Ambedkar. Then committee on Union Constitution was chaired by Jawaharlal Nehru. He also led the committee Objective Resolution, which became the basis for preamble. So Objective Resolution also Jawaharlal Nehru. As for Committee on Fundamental Rights and Minorities were concerned, it was chaired by Vallabhbhai Patel. On Committee on Order of Business, it was K.M. Munshi. Steering Committee, Dr. Rajendra Prasad himself. The Constitutional Advisor was B.N. Rao. The Vice President was H.C. Mukherjee. The committee which drafted 3 special status for Jammu and Kashmir, Alladi Krishna Swamy Iyer. So many committees were there. And you must be knowing the facts regarding our Constituent Assembly and Constitution. The Constitution was prepared almost in 3 years, to be precise, 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. So sometimes it is being criticized that it took so much time to frame our constitution, while American Constitution was prepared just within the time period of 3 months. But we should not forget that India is a hugely diverse country, and moreover, at the time of framing of constitution, Hindu-Muslim riots and civil war-like situation was going on, and that tough condition was there in which the constitution has to be framed. So the total time period was 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. Various committees were there. Total number of parts was 22 in original constitution, subsequently 25. I will discuss the parts which were excluded or deleted, and then the parts which were added. That also you need to see. The total number of articles, 395 in original constitution, now it's 468 plus. So articles also increased. Schedules, total number of schedules were 8 in original constitution, now it's 12. So in this way, the series of amendments, whenever it was needed, the parts, the articles, the schedules, all were increased. So in this way we see that these are the facts, certain facts relating with our Constituent Assembly. But first we need to see the macro level view of our Constitution. What are the salient features of our Constitution? That you need to see first, and then we will see in detail the salient features and the detailing and all those things. So what are the broad features of our Constitution? Certain facts you are already knowing, that if you see Constitution as a book, then preamble is just like prologue, introductory part, philosophy, I-card, horoscope of the Constitution, and the highlighted, separately listed portions of the Constitution is schedule, and you can see chapters of book just like parts. Every chapter has a title or name of the chapter. So every part of the Constitution has a heading, like part 3 fundamental rights, part 4 BPSC, and so on. So every part of the Constitution will have heading and name, and every part will have a group of articles, and those group of articles in that part would be constituting the parts of the Constitution, just like those parts are the those parts of the Constitution, they will be just like articles, and the paragraphs of a chapter are just like articles, all the articles dealing with the same subject. So in this capacity we see that the 25 parts at present are there. So in original Constitution there were 22 parts. However, 2 parts were done away with, because in original Constitution there were A, B, C, D category of states in part 6, part 7, part 8, part 9. But by 7th Constitutional Amendment 1956, States Reorganization Act, all states in part 6 and all union territories in part 8. So part 7 and part 9 were done away with. By this, part 7 and part 9 were done away with by 7th Constitutional Amendment 1956. So 1956 onwards only 20 parts in the Constitution. However, the 2 more parts were added by 42nd Constitutional Amendment, namely part 4A, that deals with the fundamental duties of the citizens, and part 14A. Part 14A, part 4A, fundamental duties of the citizens, part 14A, tribunals, namely administrative tribunals in 323A and other tribunals in 323B. So these 2 parts were added by 42nd Constitutional Amendment 1976, and by further you will find that 2 more parts were added. Part 9, which was blank after 1956 amendment, in which Panchayati Raj institution, and 9A, Nagar Raj institutions were added by 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment 1992. So in this way, 22 minus 2, 20 plus 2, 22 plus 2, 24, and 1 more part was added, 9B, by 97th Constitutional Amendment, cooperatives. Cooperatives were added in 9B. So total number of parts at present is 25. You can say 22 minus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1. So cooperatives were added by 97th Constitutional Amendment 2000. 97th Constitutional Amendment 2012. And Modi government took initiative to create a new ministry called Ministry of Cooperation or Cooperatives in 2021. And the theme of that ministry is Sahakarita se Samriddhi ki or. That is moving towards prosperity through cooperatives. So cooperatives, interstate cooperatives will have, the center will have jurisdiction, while cooperatives within the state, the jurisdiction will be of the state government. So we have seen all the 25 parts, but let me clarify what are the salient features of the constitution first. Broadly, if you see the constitution, what are the broad features of the constitution that we need to see? So roughly, you know, and contrast that English constitution is not written, however Indian constitution is written one. While America is having federal polity, England is having unitary polity, India is having quasi-federal polity. So what is quasi-federal polity? What is federal polity with unitary biasness? Why India is having quasi-federal polity like Canada, not like US? All these questions need to be answered. And we have secularism. So all those broad features, salient features of our constitution, salient features of our constitution, of Indian constitution. First we will know it in a macro level, and then we will go for micro level detailing of it. So based on mnemonics I have made on my own name, so you can see that first is common citizenship or single citizenship. In truly federal polity like US, there is dual citizenship, one for state, one for center. But in India, like England, we have single citizenship, and the laws of citizenship can be made only by central legislature under Article 11, and states have no role in amending or changing the laws relating to citizenship. So first is citizenship, that is single citizenship. And you know that citizens are different from subjects. Subjects were completely subjugated to the monarch. They had unlimited political obligation. They had no right against the state. But we citizens have rights against the state as well. For example, fundamental rights in Part 3, Article 12 to 35, they are primarily individual rights against the state. They are primarily individual rights against the state. So citizenship involves full and equal membership of a political community with corresponding rights and duties. And political rights are exclusive to citizens, like right to vote, right to contest elections, right to form political party, right to go for political campaign. These rights are only with the citizens. These rights cannot be conferred to the non-citizens. So in this way, we see that first is single citizenship. Then I write all the features first, and then I'll go in detailing. Unitary cum federal. Unitary cum federal means quasi-federal. Normally large countries follow, with huge diversity, follow federal polity like US, Nigeria, partly India, Canada, South Africa. And normally smaller countries follow unitary polity like England, France, Japan. In unitary polity, all powers are vested at the central government. While federal polity, federal word is derived from the root word federus. Federus means shared self-rule. So shared between center and states. And self-rule means states will have also self-rule, and they will be empowered by the constitution, not at the sweet will of center. Because in diverse and huge country, for example, in India, for example, the Tamil concerns or aspirations would be better understood by government of Chennai rather than New Delhi. So unless state governments are empowered, their regional aspirations would be neglected. Similarly, Naga aspirations can be better understood by Kohima rather than New Delhi. This is the logic of federal polity, although we will be going in detail that what are the features of federal polity, what are the features of unitary polity, why India follow quasi-federal polity, and so on. Uni itself means one. That means constitution only empowers the one government, that is central government. And here there is no constitutional delimitation or division of powers. Here there is delegation of powers or transfer of powers or decentralization of powers at the sweet will of center in unitary polity. Then missionaries of all religions equally promoted. Missionaries of all religions equally promoted. In India it is called Sarva Dharma Sambhav, equal respect for every religion, and whether followers are more or less, we are having secular polity. State will not have religion of its own. There will be no negative discrimination based on religion. And moreover, in our model of secularism, which is based on multiculturalism, America is also secular, but their model of secularism is based on multiculturalism with melting pot model. That melting pot model of America, then secular model of France, and then Indian model of secularism. We have to compare and go in detail because secularism is a basic structure of the constitution. It is also there in our preamble. So that also we need to know that our constitution is secular. There are many countries which are not secular. For example, Iran is theocracy. Theocracy means rule of religion, and religious head is political head, and constitution is written based on Shia religion, which is not the case in India. In India, there is no negative discrimination based on religion. Then autonomous and independent bodies in our constitution. There are various autonomous bodies and independent bodies in our constitution. For example, judiciary, higher judiciary, Supreme Court and High Courts, they are independent to ensure rule of law, to ensure judicial review, to ensure supremacy of the constitution. Similarly, Election Commission of India is independent to ensure free and fair election, because free and fair election is the basic structure of the constitution. Similarly, we have other independent bodies like CAG, like UPSC, which is under are independent in the sense that it is a constitutional body. But there are certain autonomous bodies also, like Finance Commission, like other bodies which are working under the supervision of the government. So these are mentioned because modern day governance is not only based on implementation of law, making of law, and interpretation of law. Auditing is part and parcel of the modern day governance. So the guardian of public purse is CAG, that is Comptroller and Auditor General. Similarly, highest legal officer of the central government, Attorney General, is not independent but autonomous in certain extent. Similarly, Finance Commission and other bodies like now GST Council under Article 279A. So there are various constitutional, statutory and extra constitutional bodies. There are various judicial and quasi-judicial bodies or semi-judicial bodies. So we will be categorizing all the bodies in one group constitutional, in one group statutory. The statutory bodies are those which are created by act of legislature, and extra constitutional. Then rights and duties. As you know that rights are mostly those justified claims and entitlements which are socially acceptable and legally enforceable. And as a private individual, the rights that we avail they are called civil rights. As a citizen, the rights that we have, they are called political rights. Then as a group, as a community, we have also certain rights that is called community claims or group rights, like rights of women, rights of SC, ST, OBC, rights of differently abled persons, rights of minorities, rights of consumers, rights of peasants, rights of workers. They are not individual claims, they are community claims or community rights. So we have all category of rights. We have on one hand fundamental rights in part 3, and now right to property under 300A is no more a constitutional right, it's a legal right, because although it is mentioned in constitution, but remedy is not constitutional for right to property. Remedy is legal. Moreover, for fundamental rights, you need 2/3 majority or a special majority to amend, while legal right is amended only by simple majority of both houses of parliament. So, rights that we avail, duties that we perform. Rights and duties are the two faces of the same coin. The rights can be secured only with the corresponding duties, and vice versa. However, there is an argument that in original constitution there was no mention of constitutional duties of citizens. It was added by 42nd Constitutional Amendment 1976. However, one thing you must note that rights cannot exist without duties. So duties were implied. They got clearly mentioned only by 42nd Amendment 1976. Then universal adult franchise. Universal adult franchise, that is the bedrock principle of democracy. Universal adult franchise, that is one citizen, one vote, one value, political equality of all citizens. That is the bedrock principle of democracy. There is no property or educational qualification attached with the voting rights. So that is universal adult franchise with parliamentary form of government. So what is parliamentary form of government? How it is different from presidential form of government? Why India followed parliamentary form of government? With parliamentary form of government, what is semi-presidential form of government, and why India followed parliamentary form of government? All these things need to be discussed. Then judicial independence. Judiciary is independent. Independence. Independent judiciary is needed to ensure rule of law, number one. Second, to uphold the supremacy of the constitution. Number 3, to ensure justice without fear, favor or biasness. Number 4, the power holders, that is members of executive and legislature, they are restrained by independent judiciary. So independent judiciary and rule of law are the features of democracy as well, while rule by law is the feature of dictatorship, and rule of law, where law is applicable to all, whether they are representatives or the people or the simple people or the privileged people or MPs or MLAs or ministers. So the law will take the same course for all. So that is possible only because of independent judiciary. We have judicial hierarchy, and higher judiciary is Supreme Court and High Courts with the powers of judicial review. Then we have lower judiciary also, district court and session court, and then judicial magistrate and municipal court and so on. Besides that, besides judicial hierarchy, we have semi-judicial bodies, quasi-judicial bodies also. To deburden judiciary, we have certain mechanisms also, that also we need to discuss. Then justice. Justice is also mentioned in preamble, and as you know, in case 1 and Bharti case 1973, Supreme Court said that entire preamble with its letter and spirit constitutes the basic structure and part of the constitution. So justice in order: social justice first, then economic justice, then political justice. They are clearly mentioned in our preamble, but we do follow distributive justice and corrective justice as well, which is not mentioned in letter, but that is implied and that is there in our spirit. Distribution of what? Distribution of resources, distribution of public goods like wealth, resources, opportunity, means of power, prestige, income, rewards. They are limited and the claims of it are many. So how to distribute it so that there is no injustice based on the principle of proportional justice, that is more needy to get more able to get more. If people below poverty line, they get subsidy. Sachin Tendulkar gets Bharat Ratna. More ability is rewarded to promote those excellence which promote social good, and more needy are to be taken care of on humanitarian ground. So we do follow corrective justice also. Corrective means something wrong happens in society, then victim must be compensated in proportion to the loss, and aggressor or offender must be punished in proportion to the scale of offense. So because of that we have professional judiciary, and the justice is a very important pillar for any stable society. Wherever there is injustice, it potentially threatens the stability of the society, and we follow almost all forms of and manifestations of justice. So this is what then written constitution. Our constitution is written one, like American constitution, while England is having constitution but not written. England is having rule of law. England's all parliamentary law are recorded, and there is rule of law in England, but what constitutes the supreme law as to be separately written as a constitution, which is not there in England. But in America, there is first written constitution in modern period, and written constitution is necessarily a feature of federal polity. That will see how, if the constitution is written and explicit, that will protect the rights and interest of the weaker states vis-a-vis stronger center. So that is written constitution. Then apatkal provisions or emergency provisions. Apatkal provisions, there are three kinds of emergencies: 352 national emergency, 356 president's rule in a state, and 360 financial emergency. And emergency provisions have been inspired from German constitution, because to deal with extraordinary situation we must have mechanism for it. And finally, local bodies being given constitutional status. Local bodies were existing. For example, villages were existing since later Vedic period. Municipalities of Madras in 1688, municipalities of Bombay in 1826, and Calcutta also 1826. So panchayats and municipalities were existing even before independence. However, they got constitutional status only by 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment 1992. So by constitutional status they were recognized as third tier of the government, and this is for political decentralization, for grassroots democracy, for participative democracy, because no democracy can succeed without participation of the people. People are gods of democracy. Political parties and leaders are yajman of democracy, while election commission and other independent bodies are just like free and fair priest of democracy. Festivals are just the festivals of democracy. Elections, vocal cord of democracy, political parties, and of course gods of democracy, people. So as God bless us with all the merit and good fortune, similarly the gods of democracy, people, bless leaders and parties with votes and taxes. So in this way we can see democracy as well. So democracy, which was considered only as a form of government, as you can recall that during time of Plato, Aristotle also there was democracy, although Plato and Aristotle hated democracy, but it was only treated as a form of government. But last 150 years democracy has swept the whole world and now has assumed center stage, so much so that politics is called democratic politics. And it is being said that democracy may be the worst form of the government, but it is the best among the availables. And it is also being said about democracy that evils of democracy can be addressed only by greater democracy. And four pillars of democracy: executive, legislature and judiciary and free press. And fifth pillar of democracy is civil society, that autonomous groups, social groups, which also influence the state decision or public policy. So these are the broad features of the constitution. First is common citizenship or single citizenship, then unitary cum federal, then missionaries of all religions equally promoted, that is secularism, then autonomous and independent bodies, then rights and duties, then universal franchise, and with parliamentary form of government, then judicial independence, then justice, social, economic and political, then written constitution, then apatkal provisions, and finally the local bodies being given constitutional status by 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment. So before going into detail, first we will be discussing one by one, so that you can understand the all features, broader features of the constitution. Although if you go in detailing, there were various secondary features of the constitution as well. But right now we will be discussing the broader features of constitution. So first is common citizenship or single citizenship. So first I need to discuss that. Common citizenship, or it's also called single citizenship. So first of all, you must know what is citizenship. Citizenship involves full and equal membership of a political community, full and equal membership of a political community with corresponding rights and duties. So we are not subjects, we are citizens, and citizens have not only duties towards the state, not only having political obligation, and that political obligation is also limited. In monarchy, subjects had unlimited political obligations and no rights against the state. But we citizens have certain rights against the state as well. So single citizenship or common citizenship means only central government or federal government will make laws relating to citizenship. Only central government or federal government will make laws for citizenship. In America, which is truly federal, states and their legislature have also the role in amending laws of citizenship. Like in America, one is citizen of America, citizen of Oklahoma, citizen of America, citizen of Florida, citizen of America, citizen of Ohio, citizen of America, citizen of Los Angeles, or some other states, so or Texas. But in India, we are only citizens of India. States have no role in amending laws of citizenship. This is the unitary feature. In England also there is single citizenship. And as far as citizenship is concerned, it is mentioned in part 2 of the Constitution. Part 2 of the Constitution, that is from Article 5 to 11. However, In original constitution, they only provided the grounds for getting and giving up the citizenship. The detailed laws with minute details were provided by Citizenship Act 1955, Indian Citizenship Act 1955, which are amended in 1986, 1992, then 2003, 2005, 2015, 2019. 2019 CAA was quite controversial. So all those things we need to see that what are the principles of citizenship, what are the changes and why those changes are there. Like jus soli and jus sanguinis. America follow the principle of jus soli, that citizenship by soil, and jus sanguinis is followed in England, that is by lineage or blood origin or descendant. So in this way we will find that how India followed composite principle, partly jus soli, partly jus sanguinis. Those detailings we will be seeing in part 2 of the Indian Constitution. But we do have single citizenship, we do have common citizenship. Like England, we don't have dual citizenship, that is one for center and one for states. So all those detailings will be seeing there in citizenship. Now second feature, unitary cum federal. So what is federal polity? What is unitary polity? Why India follow quasi-federal polity? India's federal features are borrowed from Canadian constitution and not from US constitution. Why Canada followed quasi-federal polity? Because it got frightened by US Civil War 1860 to 1865, and US was at the brink of disintegration because of conflict between North and South Indian states, South American states. So a strong center could only maintain national unity and integrity. So we need to see what is federal polity, what is unitary polity, and then we will apply in Indian context. So first of all, federal polity. Federal polity versus unitary polity. So what is the root word of federal? Federus. That is the root word of federal. Federus. Federus means shared self-rule. Shared self-rule. So shared self-rule of whom? It is the shared self-rule of states along with center. And in normally large countries with democracy, like America, like Canada, like South Africa, federal polity is followed. Germany also federal polity is followed, and in the countries with diversity like Spain also federal polity is followed, but although it's small. But in England, France, Japan, unitary polity is followed, where all powers are vested in central government. States are not empowered by the constitution. So in federal polity, first, constitutional division of powers between center and states. Constitutional division of powers between center and states. Constitutional division of powers between center and states. That is constitutional delimitation of powers between center and states. That is, states are empowered by the same constitution by which center is empowered. This is there in federal polity. In contrast, in unitary polity, all powers are vested. All powers are vested with central government, and states are empowered by center, not by constitution. Empowered by center through delegation of powers, not by constitution. Not by constitution. states are empowered by the center, not by the constitution. For example, in England, all powers are vested at the central government of London and state governments of Scotland, Wales, Ireland, they are empowered by the sweet will of center. This is the first difference. This is for administrative convenience and this is for accommodating regional aspirations of self-rule. So this is the fundamental difference. This is the first difference. In federal polity, in one line or nutshell, the states are more empowered to accommodate the regional aspirations of self-rule, in contrast to unitary polity. So this is the first difference between federal polity and unitary polity. If we see the other differences between federal polity and unitary polity, number 2, necessarily written constitution. Necessarily written constitution. Written constitution is the guarantee for the weaker states vis-a-vis a stronger center. But in unitary polity like England, may be unwritten constitution, So if the constitution is not explicit, it's not written, there is ample scope for the stronger center to manipulate it, to twist it, to work to its advantage. So this is the second point of federal polity, that their written constitution will be guaranteeing the rights and interests of the weaker states vis-a-vis a stronger center. Third difference here, indestructible union of indestructible states. Indestructible union of indestructible states like in US, neither center is destroyable nor state is destroyable. Destroyable means the reorganization of the states, that is the name, territories and boundaries of the existing states cannot be unilaterally changed by center without the concurrent recommendation of states. But in unitary polity, the reorganization of the states can be done by center unilaterally, even contrary to the recommendation of a state legislature. In India, there is unitary feature in this regard. In 2014, Andhra Assembly said no Telangana, but center said yes Telangana, and Telangana was created. But in truly federal polity like America, Nigeria, Australia, Germany, the states' boundaries, names, territories cannot be reorganized without their consent. So here, indestructible union of destructible states. Destructible states means the reorganization of the states can be done without their consent. So its United Kingdom is the ideal example of unitary polity, while United States of America is the ideal example of federal polity. So in USA, the focus is on states, federal units, and 50 stars of American flag. They represent 50 states. So this is the third difference. Then fourth difference, in federal polity like America, central government or federal government was formed by an agreement between the states. The center or federal government was formed by an agreement between the states, which is not the case in unitary polity. 13 colonies of America, which later became 50 states, jointly fought American War of Independence, and it was the success of American capitalism versus British imperialism. So those 13 colonies who jointly fought War of Independence as a separate entity, they came together, and by their agreement, the union or central government was formed. So here, central or federal government was formed by agreement between the states. Federal government was formed by agreement between states as I said that 13 colonies of America which jointly fought American War of Independence against British imperialism, they later became 50 states, and by their common agreement a central or federal government was formed to look after common affairs like defense, communication, banking, external affairs, security, national security and so on. But in unitary polity, center was not result of an agreement between the states. In India, for example, it's not that all states independently fought for a fight of independence and then they formed central government. The central government and state government came into existence simultaneously through constitution. It's not that center was result of an agreement between the states. So here center is not the result of agreement between states. Agreement between states. This is the first difference between federal polity on one hand and unitary polity on the other. So we will see and fit Indian polity in that context. In India, there is single citizenship. In India, there is written constitution. In India, there is indestructible union of destructible states. In India, center is not formed by an agreement between the states. So partly we have unitary biasness within federal framework. So the list is still not complete. There are other features of federal polity which is different from unitary polity. So in federal polity, federal court is there. Federal court is there. Courts are there in England also to ensure rule of law, to ensure justice. But there is no federal court in England. Federal court is one which potentially protect the rights and interest of the weaker states vis-a-vis stronger center. In India, Supreme Court acts as a federal court. In unitary polity, there are courts, but no federal court is there. In other words, in unitary polity, if the rights and interests of the states are breached, they will have to approach the same center. There is no federal court where they can approach. So, federal court protects the rights and interests of the states. In America, there is federal court. In Nigeria, in Germany, in Canada, in Australia, and South Africa. But in Japan, there is no federal court. In England, there is no federal court. In France also, there is no federal court. This is the fifth difference. Now, how to empower more states more? Upper house represent states. Upper house represent states. Like in America, upper house Senate represent states. 2 senators from each state, 52 is 100. So 100 senators in upper house. And in America, upper house Senate is more powerful than lower house, House of Representatives. In India also, upper house is called Rajya Sabha because it primarily represents states. So in federal polity, states are given representation at the union legislative level to protect their rights and interests. The federal equilibrium cannot be unilaterally disturbed by center to the disadvantage of the states. But in unitary polity, either there is unicameral legislature, or even if there is upper house, it does not represent states. For example, England is unitary. Its upper house is House of Lords. It does not represent states. It represents talents, peer groups, elites, hereditary elites. In France also, upper house is Senate, but it does not represent states. It represents local bodies. So here, no upper house, either no upper house, like China, which is a centralized communist system, there is no upper house. There is only single house, lower house. There is no upper house. No upper house or no representation of states in bicameral legislature. Even if there is upper house, it does not represent states. So, upper house protects the rights and interests of the states at the union legislative level in federal polity. This is the sixth difference. Then seventh difference, already you have seen that in truly federal polity there is dual citizenship, one for center, one for state. In contrast, in unitary polity, you will find only single citizenship. Single citizenship. Then how to empower states more, that also you need to see that how in federal polity the states are more empowered. The residuary powers in federal polity is with the states, while in unitary polity residuary powers are with the center. So residuary powers means powers with states. For example, in America, there is only central list and state list, and all other powers are with the states. In Australia, the three lists, central list, state list and concurrent list, like India, and residuary powers are with the in India, the residuary powers are with the center, Article 248. For example, cyber laws. At the time of framing of our constitution, nobody knew cyber laws. But now cyber laws are the reality. IT Act 2000, amended in 2008, further amendment in 2021. Cyber security, cyber laws, IT Acts. So they are formed by center, because India is having unitary biasness. In Germany, there is only federal list and all powers are with the states. It means all residuary powers are with the states. In Canada, there is central list and the state list, and all powers, residuary powers are with the center. So in this way, we see the differences. But in truly federal polity, residuary powers are with the states. But in unitary biasness or unitary polity, residuary powers with the center. Residuary powers with center. This is the eighth difference between unitary polity, federal polity on one hand and unitary polity on the other. Then we will further see that in truly federal polity, states may have their own constitution, states may have their own flag, but in unitary polity, one nation, one flag. Like in India is having unitary biasness in this regard, one nation, one constitution, one nation, one flag. So the focus is on national unity and integrity, as the regional aspirations, if given more space, then it may become secessionist or separatist, and a strong center is needed to maintain national unity and territorial integrity. So Sardar Patel, the Iron Man of India, was successful because of the unitary biasness. Had there been no unitary biasness, Union Home Ministry could not have worked in that manner. That Herculean task of maintaining national unity could not have been possible. So we have seen the differences between federal polity on one hand and unitary polity on the other. In federal polity, there is rigidity in amendment. For example, in America, in last 300 years, there are less than 50 amendments. But in England, Parliament by simple majority or Union Legislature by simple majority can make any law. It is said about British Parliament that British Parliament can make any law except a male a female, a female a male, except a sunrise sunset and sunset a sunrise. Means it is a phrase, but in unitary polity by simple majority the central legislature can make any law. There is no 2/3 majority, there is no 3/4 majority, there is no need to take recommendation or concurrent advice of states, no mechanism of consulting states. But in federal polity, like America, constitutional amendment is not possible unless such bill is passed by 2/3 majority of Senate first and then agreed by 3/4 of the states. 3/4 of the states, 75% of the states, means out of 50 states, almost 38 states must say yes or must approve such amendment, then only constitutional amendment would be possible. So rigidity in amendment protects states, but flexibility in amendment gives more leverage to the center. So this is another difference between federal polity and on one hand and unitary polity on the other. And in this way we will see and will compare that how India is having quasi-federal polity, why India followed quasi-federal polity, and what are the unitary biasness. Our federal polity is borrowed from Canadian Constitution, not from American Constitution, and how we are asymmetrical federalism. America is symmetrical federalism. Each state will have 2 senators or 2 representatives in upper house. But in India, states are diverse in terms of population. So UP is having 31 seats in Rajya Sabha, while Delhi, which is semi-state or union territory, listed as a union territory, having only 3 seats in Rajya Sabha. So we are not a symmetrical federalism. It's not that all states will have uniform representation. Number 2, Article 371. 371 to 371J gives special responsibility to governors of certain states. So that makes our polity also asymmetrical. Moreover, in America, it's legislative federalism because state legislature have greater role in law making. In India, executive federalism. The states are more empowered in executive matters, and in law making matters, center is more powerful. So these are the differences, and we will see that how after independence, particularly 50 to 67, when Congress was dominant both at center and states, we had centralized federalism. Hardly there were few states where non-Congress governments were there. For example, 1957 Kerala communist government, then Punjab Akali government, but they were too short-lived. In 67 Congress lost in 9 states, and many states witnessed non-Congress government and greater misuse of 356. So 67 to 90 there was conflicting federalism, as the use of 356, use or misuse, it is subjective interpretation. Center will justify and say it is use, while the states will call it misuse. So conflicting federalism, but thanks to judgment of Supreme Court in Bombay case 1994, thanks to Sarkaria Commission, Rajmanar Commission, thanks to later Punchi Commission, thanks to maturing democracy, and thanks to coalition era, that brought down the misuse of 356 in 1990 onwards. So we moved to cooperative federalism. Now we have competitive federalism, fiscal federalism. All those details we'll be seeing when we study center-state relationship in Part 11, Part 12 and Part 13 of the Indian Constitution, along with emergency provisions which is responsible for unitary biasness. So that part we'll be discussing, and today only this we have discussed the federal versus unitary polity. In next class we will be discussing the parliamentary form of government and compare it with the presidential form of government and why India followed parliamentary form of government. This we will be discussing in next class. So that's it for today. Thank you.